it's an honor.
And it's an honor to lift our voice and sing
To the living God.
to the living God.
No one can deny
No one can deny
that Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ is the Most High.
Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Video. So it's been 3 weeks, and like I said before, I have missed you guys so much. We got on the road, and we went on a road trip. We went from Oklahoma City, and we drove from Oklahoma City all the way to San Diego. But I want to be honest with you guys. When we landed in Oklahoma City, I had this heaviness about me. And my guess is that, especially after prayer and understanding from God what that heaviness was, I think there's a little bit of heaviness in all of our hearts right now. If you think about the last, 4 or 5 months, there's been a lot of work and some hurt. And I know, and I'm just talking about the stuff that we've gone through together. I'm not even talking about the individual things that are happening at each one of our houses, the bills, the marriages, the raising the kids, the school, the job. I'm not even talking about that stuff. I'm just talking about the life of Uplift and what it's been like. And as I got further away from you guys, because what I did realize is that my strength, the thing that was kind of keeping my heart to beat and the thing that was kind of keeping me going was being in the company of you guys every week. And I just couldn't wait to get here every Saturday, just to be around you. I was even going to the praise team practice just to hear them sing, just to be around you guys during this time. And I got out to Oklahoma City, and God began to speak to my heart. And listen, on this trip, God began to show me things because I was hurting so much. I was going through so much. God began to remind me of one thing over and over again. We were riding in the car, and this one word came out. And this one word is the word that I learned in Oklahoma City. It's the word that God kept with me in every single place we went, through New Mexico, through Colorado, through Arizona, in the Grand Canyon, through Nevada, Sin City. It's the same word that he kept showing me when we went into California, into Los Angeles, and into San Diego. It's this one word that God showed me that I was not able to see because I had so much going on in my life, so many trials. Grandmother's not well, so many trials, pressure at work, so many trials, things at church, so many trials, raising children, that I had forgotten one thing. I forgot how fascinating God is. How amazing this God that created these mountains. I'm driving down the street, and left and right and in front of me, all I see is these beautiful, majestical mountains. Man, nothing else. I got into these high mountains, and I saw all these beautiful trees and these clouds, and I began to meet these people. And everywhere we went, we met people who spoke into my situation, who spoke into my trials, who said things to me. And the thing that I learned is that God is fascinating. And so what I want to do is I want to leave from that sermon series on perfection. I think we got everything we needed to get out of perfection. The ministers the last 3 weeks did an excellent job of closing that series out. And I want to focus. God is drawing me to focus on how fascinating he is, how wonderful he is, how awesome he is. Today I want to start with talking with you about this one thing. I am fascinated by what God can do through trials. Yeah, we've been suffering. We've been going through a lot. Listen, if you live in this world today, I don't care where you are, you're going to be faced with trials. The things that we've been going through, listen, they are not just happening at Uplift, but if you pay attention to the news, if you talk to your family, if you talk to your friends, if you just open your eyes and look around what's going on in your neighborhood, listen, there are trials coming like never before. But I'm amazed. I'm fascinated at what God can do through something that happens bad in my life. I'm amazed at what God is doing. I'm fascinated at what God is going to do with all the trials that I'm dealing with now, with all the things I'm praying for, with all the things that are challenging me, whether they be in my house or at my job or with my children. I'm fascinated at what God's going to do. So I got into Oklahoma City. I was feeling this heaviness. And then everybody said, hey, why don't we go over to see the memorial from the Oklahoma City bombing? And I thought that's the perfect thing to do. I've already got a lot of heaviness, so why don't we go and look at a memorial for a few hours? But I went over to that memorial. And God used one object at that memorial to show me how fascinating he is. I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with the Oklahoma City bombing. But basically, Timothy McVeigh, back in 1995, I think it's April 19, he backed up a van full of explosives. He was angry with the government about various things. Right or wrong, he decided that the best thing that he could do was blow up a federal building in Oklahoma City, 1995, April 19. Now, the explosion from this truck blew off the entire side of the building. The debris went everywhere and covered everything, and everything that was living in that area died. 160 people died, over 800 people were injured. I'm talking about injured. Many of these people who died, you learn at the memorial, because they got small chairs for children, big chairs for adults. Let me tell you something. If Americans can't do one thing, we can do memorials, man. This thing is stunning. It's amazing what they've done with this memorial. And you walk around and you look at all these things that they've done to memorialize the death of 160 people. And then you get to the top of the hill and you see this beautiful tree. It's called the Survivor Tree. Now, believe it or not, it was right by the building that was blown up. All the debris, this is it right here, all the debris fell on top of it. It completely destroyed it. Now, as people began to clean up the debris and start to try to move forward, this strange thing happened. Over a couple of months, this tree began to come back to life. Matter of fact, it began to bloom leaves and grow branches, and this tree with all this glass in it, this tree with all this, it had all types of window treatments, it had all types of bricks and plaster. This tree began to come back to life. And what happened over time is that this tree began to be the heartbeat of a city that was destroyed. It began to be the heartbeat of 160 people that had died and 800 people that were injured. This tree not only became a city symbol, but people all around the world. I was there from Charlotte. While I was there from Charlotte, I met people from other countries. I asked them to take a picture, and I don't speak English, and then they gave me the camera and we swapped cameras. People from all around the world coming to Oklahoma City to see this tree. Because this tree is an example of what God can do in any of our trials. This tree is an example of no matter what you've been through in your life, it does not matter what you're going through, it doesn't matter what you've been through. Listen, we're all in a trial. You're either in a storm right now, you either just came out of a storm, or you can look out ahead and you can see the clouds forming. We're all in a storm. We're all in trials. We're all going to go through something. And some of us, we've been through stuff that left us looking like this tree. Some of us have been through things that we shouldn't have walked away from. Some of us have been through things in our lives that other people have gone through. And they didn't make it, man. They lost their minds. They walked away. They left God. But you stand here today, just like this tree. You stand here knowing that if you can just keep going, that the sun will come in, that your branches will be replenished, that leaves will grow again, that we serve a God that is fascinating. Listen, he can take the trial. The tree is now bigger than it was before the trial. I stood there before this tree with all my burden, with all my hurt from the summer, with all my hurt, with all the things that I'm struggling with my grandma right now and her health, with all the things that I've got going on at work and with all the stuff that's on me right now. And I stood there fascinated at what God can do and understanding that if I can just put my trust, and the tree doesn't even make a decision like this. It just keeps doing what it's supposed to do. That God can fix any situation that I have, that he can use my trials, he can renew me. And so what I want to do today is I just want to talk with you about trials, because I know we're all going through it. That's one promise, that all of us, we're all going to face trials. I want to go over to James chapter 1. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about James. James is the brother of Jesus. So James had firsthand knowledge of everything Jesus did. He was there the entire time. He saw every struggle that Jesus went through, everything that Jesus went through when he was little, all the bullying incidents, all the peer pressure that Jesus didn't give into, the times when Jesus didn't talk back, the times when Jesus was treated unfairly as a child. James was there. James was there when Jesus became Jesus, when he became known as Jesus, when he accepted his call. He saw Jesus go down and be tempted by the devil. He saw all the trials and tribulations that the enemy was throwing at Jesus. He also saw Jesus go up on that cross. He saw Jesus be spat on. He saw Jesus be whipped. He saw Jesus be crucified. He saw Jesus die. James had a front seat view into how to respond to trials. He had a chance to see exactly how we as Christians should respond to trials by watching his brother Jesus go through all that stuff his entire life. And James starts out in chapter 1, the second verse. First he comes in the first verse he says, listen, I'm James, I'm a pastor, and I'm writing this message to you. And he immediately goes, and in the second verse he says, consider it great joy. I know some of your versions would probably say, consider it all joy. It's 100% joy. My brothers, and when he says brothers, he's talking about sisters too. Whenever you experience various trials, you got to consider it joy whenever you're going through something. Now let's stop there for a second. I want to point out a couple things. First of all, we've got a man here who is a pastor and the brother of Jesus. He spent his entire life with Jesus. Let me sit down and just talk to you for a second. You got to get this now. He spent his entire life watching Jesus. He's a pastor now. He's talking to the church. He's obviously going to put his most important writings in the first chapter. I don't want this to get lost to the back. You know, sometimes people start books. I got 3 or 4 books going right now that I haven't gotten nowhere near the end of them. So you got to imagine that he's sitting there thinking, I've got to get the most important thing, the biggest point I got to get across. I need to get it across in the first chapter, because somebody might read this first chapter and put the book down. I don't care nothing about James. So I need to get it all in right now. This is the most important thing. And in the very first point that he makes, he says, you got to consider it joy when you experience trials. And that's what would have been the lesson that he would have learned from watching Christ throughout his life. Christ throughout his life was persecuted from the time he was young to the time he died. And he handled those trials in such a way. Hebrew writer says that Jesus looked toward the cross with joy. That word joy again. That when Jesus was thinking about, I've got to go and die for all these people, I've got to get up on the cross, they're going to beat me, they're going to spit on me, they're going to hit me with a stick, they're going to say mean, ugly things to me, they're going to put me up, put nails inside of my hands and my wrists, in my feet, and then they're going to put me up and stand me up. Every breath that I take, I'm going to pull against those nails. But I consider that joy. And, you know, to me, in my own carnal mind, these two words are antonyms. Joy is nothing like trials. I don't ever think about joy when I think of trials, and I don't ever think about trials when I think about joy, or do I? We had a lot of kids to come up here today. We had even adults that come up here today and who all have received graduation certificates for various things. The only way you can get up on this stage and receive a certificate, Brother Neil, is that you go through the trials of class, right? So there's a direct correlation between every joy in your life. Women that have had children, it takes a little bit of work to get that child out now, doesn't it? But on the other side of that work is joy. You can't disconnect joy from trials. Matter of fact, there's nothing in your life that you have considered to be great joy that you didn't have to work to get. We're walking throughout the area in Las Vegas. And a lady said, hey, come here. I want to give you a free vacation. And I said, wait. There's no such thing as a free vacation. There's going to have to be some trial for me in order to get the vacation. So even before you tell me where you're going to send us to, tell me what I got to do first. And she said, well, no, it's no trial. You don't have to do anything. No, you won't do anything except for go to this 90-minute, she started sounding like the Charlie Brown lady at that point. Wah, 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 wah. Because it is a great trial for me on vacation to go to a high-pressure sales meeting for 90 minutes. But in reality, there's nothing that happens in our life that results in joy. Nothing. Doesn't start with a trial. Let's go a little bit further. He says, consider it great joy, my brothers, whenever you experience various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. Listen, you're not just going through this for the fun of it. God's just not just out there just bothering you right now, but he's getting you to a place of endurance, but endurance must do its complete work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. Lacking nothing. And what James is saying to us is that, listen, you are going through this trial so that you can get to the joy. It is not the other way around. God doesn't give you joy. I know it feels like that sometimes. He gives you something and takes it back from you. So God gave you joy just to take you through a trial. No. That's not what happened. What happened is you paid a price to get to that point. That was called a trial. And then God gave you joy. And God never said, not one time, that after he gave you that joy, that would be the end of the story. Now, I know that is what Christianity has become, but it's not real. If you're living and breathing, that whole process of living automatically puts you in the trial category. You're going to be going through, you're going to have ailments, you're going to lose people, you're going to go through things, you're going to have problems at work, you're going to have problems at home, you're going to have problems in your community. The only time that you won't have that is when you're dead. So be careful what we're praying for. You know, sometimes we pray, God, take all my problems away. No, it's okay to have some problems, because problems lets you know that God allowed you to wake up, that the thing that was ailing you That it didn't take you out last night, that you didn't have an aneurysm last night because you had so much stress on your mind, that your heart didn't attack you, that you didn't stroke out, but that God gave you the ability to be here yet one more day closer to the solution of your problem, one more day closer to heaven, one more day closer to your family. God has blessed us, and he's blessing us inside of our trial. So that's this wise man, right? And they say to this wise man, they say, tell us the secret to joy. And he said, that's easy. I can give you 2 words. Great circumstances. Okay, well, how do we get to a place in our life where we have great circumstances? He said, that's easy. I'll give you 1 word. Experience. So you say to him, say, well, how do I get experience? Bad circumstances. See, it takes the bad circumstances in our life. We've got to experience that. To get the experiences that move us into the place where we can make good decisions and have good circumstances, but more importantly, appreciate the good things that God is doing for us and has done for us. I want to go a little bit further. He says, because I think that there are a few barriers that kind of get in the way of us really understanding this whole joy and trial thing. That there are a few barriers that stop us from experiencing joy during our trials. Like for me earlier this week, this trial that I'm dealing with, I couldn't wrap my brain around joy. Matter of fact, all the way up until I really got into this scripture, joy was the furthest thing away from me. I got a call that my grandmother was not doing well at all. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And what I began to feel, and I want to share this with you because these barriers that I experienced this week, listen, if we can identify these barriers, we can get over them. The first thing that hit me was fear. I started thinking right away, listen, I can see the storm clouds coming. That's a bad storm. You know, we're going to lose something. I began to have this pain, this unbelievable pain. I was with Broom Thursday, and I told him, this pain that I had, I couldn't explain it. It was just almost too much for me to bear. I got so tired, like I couldn't sleep well. Even though I was exhausted, I couldn't rest. And when I was up, I couldn't function. I was just exhausted, fatigued, and then it started becoming this dread thing. And even Thursday when I talked with Broom, I was in dread. I was saying, oh, I think that something's bad gonna happen. I was worrying. I couldn't find joy because of the fear, because of the pain, because of the fatigue, because of the dread, because I was putting too much energy on all those things. And the real thing that was happening to me is that I was doubting. I was doubting everything that I know, everything I preach. Listen, just because I'm up here doesn't mean it's easy for me when I'm going through this. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to make it through this without you guys, because I believe in my heart that God has put me in a family, a church family that is going to support me. And let me just say this right now. I just want to throw this in for free. I don't care what you're going through. This church will be a place, a family where we will be here for you. I don't care what your trial is. We're going to be here for you. As your pastor, listen to me. I want to talk to you for a second. As your pastor, there is nothing that you have gone through or nothing that you will go through that will stop me from being there for you and for putting the full weight of this church. Not very heavy. We don't have a lot of people. But the full weight of this church will be on whatever your trial is. And I promise you that. And I promise you that with all of my heart. You don't have to be stopped by the barriers to joy when you're going through a trial. And I know it's easy for us to just want to sit back and be in fear, but that fear is not from God, guys. Matter of fact, the Bible says that fear leads to torment. And a lot of times when you're in fear, you're tormenting yourself. You're saying things, you're making stuff up. And let me tell you something. When you're going through something, do not go to Google. The devil uses Google in your trials to make you think the very worst thing possible happened. Do you realize that a lot of those people are not even doctors that are typing stuff up there? And listen, don't try to take any of those home remedies on Google. Those are not professionals. But I want to talk to you for a second, because your pastor has just gone through this. I'm telling you, I understand that inside of a trial, you have a significant amount of pain. Tuesday, when I got the news, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe. It just hurt so bad everywhere. I couldn't put a finger on where. It just felt like the entire weight of the situation was on me. And it was because I was allowing it. I wasn't thinking about the joy, the good things in it. Now, while there are some barriers, there's some things that we need to know. James says, know these things. And I want to just talk with you about a few things that we need to know during our trials. First of all, you need to know that God is not punishing you. I know we get to that place, because I got to that place. Even with my situation, and I know I haven't really done anything, but you start to play back stuff. If I would have done this different in college, if I would have done this thing, if I'd have been at this thing, if I'd have said this thing, none of those things would have changed this situation. This is God's doing. But not only is God not punishing you, but I need to talk to somebody. God is not failing you. God has not failed you. God does not fail. God has the full ability to do anything that he wants to do. God never fails. Somebody needs to hear that today. God did not fail you and is not going to fail you. I know it hurts. I know we got fear and we've got doubt. But he won't fail you. He's not punishing you. Listen, God is not abandoning you. And this is hard sometimes, because many of us have had situations where people have packed up and left us. Some of us have had fathers who have just left us. And we need to understand that God is not a man like that. God doesn't lie. He is a father in heaven. He loves you. I don't care what it looks like. He never leaves you. Let me tell you what Isaiah said. When I was in the water drowning, it was you that was keeping me afloat. He said, when I was in the river and the rivers were pushing me, trying to knock me down and get me to drown that way, it's you that stood there. You stood right around me, and you allowed those rivers to flow around me. I was able to stand in the river and not be tossed and fade away. He said, when I was in the fire and the fire was burning all around me, it was you that protected me from the fire. And not only did you protect me from the fire, listen to me, you got me out that fire, and I got out and I didn't even smell like smoke. Isn't that amazing? So not only is God not going to abandon you, but listen, you need to understand this. God may not make it all better. He says that you will have various trials. Listen, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that God is going to make it better. Because generally that make it better has something to do with the exact situation. And in all cases, God has something bigger. He's taking you to a different place. I know it doesn't make sense. Joy, trials. It doesn't make sense. Joy, trials. But God's going to make it. He's not going to promise you that he's going to fix that thing. He's going to make it better. But also, you may pray. God may not answer your prayer quickly. And you need to understand that, because when God doesn't answer your prayer quickly in all of these things, this is what leads you back to that other list of fear and doubt and dread. You know, you're praying and you don't hear exactly from God when you want to hear it. But God answers all prayers. Let me tell you something. In many times, God has answered our prayers. But because of us, we didn't hear the answer. There's been times 5, 10 years later, and I realized that the closed door was God's answer. And this is the most important thing you need to get from this passage, is that God will use your trial. He'll use the thing that you went through to produce in you endurance, to get you to a place, to help you, to grow you, to not just save you, not just to get you out of the situation that you're in today, but to take you to another level where he can use you. Listen, create ministry through you, help other folks through your situation, encourage people just like that tree. Listen, I was encouraged by a tree. It didn't say anything to me. It lived. It didn't pat me on the back. It didn't give me advice. Its leaves were green. It didn't kiss me on the cheek. It shaded me. And God can use you in that very same way to make a difference in this world. People from all around the world come to see this tree. And let me tell you something. When you get through this trial, when God finishes using you, people all around the world, I'm speaking to somebody right now, going to be encouraged by what God did inside of your trials. So how do you find this joy? How do you find this joy in the midst of your disaster? I know it's hard. I've been going through it, guys. You know, when God began to speak this fascinating thing to me and began showing me these fascinating things, it began to blow my mind. I was so in awe of him. And then I kind of got to the point where I said, okay, now what am I supposed to do? Because in my mind, joy and trials are antonyms. And so James goes a little bit further in verse 5. Check this out. He says, you want to find joy in disaster, he says, now, if any of you lacks wisdom, if you don't know why you're going through this trial, if you lack wisdom, if you can't figure out how to have joy in the middle of your disaster, if you don't know why you lost this, if you don't know what happened, if you're struggling with this thing, this trial, and you want to get out of it, he says, if anybody lacks wisdom, that means you lack wisdom. If you had wisdom, you'd be out of the trial. He says, if anybody lacks wisdom, he should ask God. Just ask me. He says, and if you ask me, I will give it to you generously. It says, who gives to all generously and without criticizing. Matter of fact, it's okay with me that you're not wise enough to figure this out, even though I've been teaching you this the whole time. I'm cool with that. Because all I want to do as your God is just get you through this. I don't want you here no more. I want to get you past this. I understand it's done. It's trial. It hurts. But now I got work for you to do, and I want to get you past it. So if you want that wisdom, all you've got to do is come to me, and I'll give it to you without criticizing. And listen, and I'll give it to you without hesitation. I'll give it to you. He'll give it to you. And so the first thing that we have to do in order to find joy inside of our disaster is that we got to go to God for wisdom. We need God's wisdom. Listen, you're going through some stuff, your cardinal mind, you won't understand it. You think you understand it. Listen, you're bumping your head against the wall. You're trying to get to a place that you can't get to in that way. You got a joy trial thing going on in your life and you can't understand that. You need wisdom. You need to understand why you're where you are and what it is God wants you to do. The joy that's at the end of this for you, it's all trapped up in God's wisdom. He goes a little bit further. He says, verse 6, but let him act in faith without doubting. For the doubter is like a surging sea driven and tossed by the wind. That person, that doubter, the person that doubts, listen, I'm going to God, I'm saying, God, give me wisdom. God says, okay, I need you to leave this or to let this go or to accept this or to start this ministry. And then all of a sudden you start talking to one of your non-church friends and girl, I wouldn't put up, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't do this at work, I wouldn't put up with that. You know how that go. Non-church friend. And you take God's wisdom that he's given you and you begin to doubt, well, God, Sally told me that if I do that, I'm probably gonna lose my job. And what God says to us, what James says to us is that if you do that, you become unstable. He says, an indecisive man, if you begin to doubt God, God's giving you direction, he told you to move forward in something, and then you begin to doubt God, you become an indecisive man. And you know what James says to God? He says, an indecisive man is unstable in all his ways. You've been around indecisive people, and in your conversation, they go from happy to sad to confused to telling you what to do and telling you what they wouldn't do to admitting that they've done it and did. He likens it to waves because waves, if you ever been on a cruise ship or a boat, you understand that the waves make you look like this. And this is what indecisive people look like. And if one thing that all of us can agree on that we don't like, is people who are indecisive. Well, you want to go to dinner tonight? I don't know. Let's go to Red Lobster. Well, I don't want to go there. Well, where do you want to go? I don't care. Well, what about Chick-fil-A? Well, I don't like chicken. You got folk like that at work, right? It's not you. It's not us. But the second thing God says, if you want to get to this joy that's in disaster, you gotta stop doubting. You gotta stop being unstable. You gotta stop doubting. You gotta stop questioning God. It's okay to question God. Let me get this right now, because we don't serve a God that's too weak to answer your question. All right? But when you question God and he gives you an answer, then you can't keep going back. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? You want me to do what? You want me, wait, I just want to make sure now. He says in verse 9 and 10, he says, the brother of humble circumstances should boast in his exaltation. But the one who is rich should boast in his humiliation, because he will pass away like a flower of the field. And I just want to stop there for a second, because what I know we see that word rich and we automatically think about money, but what God was saying to my heart was this right here, and that is, we can get in this place where we're going through a trial and we want to make everybody on the outside believe that we bigger than the trial, like this thing ain't gonna take me out, like I don't care nothing about that, I'm too tough, I'm too much, I'm bigger than this trial. And what I hear James saying to us is that we need to have humility when we're going through a trial. We need to be able to be honest and candid when you're hurting, it is not the time to act like you're not hurting. How you doing today? Oh, I'm blessed. I'm Holy Ghost filled. Get out to the car and break down. We've got to get to a place to where we are humble in our trials. God sends somebody to you to help you. Open up to him and talk to him. God's giving you a pastor. Listen, God is giving you a pastor. I'm not in any way trying to blow my own horn here. But there's not nothing in my life more important than you. And I mean that with my heart. And if you don't believe me, test me. Put me in the game. Let me see if I can hit that three-point shot or not. Test me. But don't sit back in a trial. Don't sit back trying not to I don't want pastor to know I'm struggling in this area. That is my job. And with the help of God, my job is to get the help. I'm going to just get you and God in front of each other, and then I'm going to step out the way. But it takes humility in order for me to do that job. And so I said, okay, God, now you're telling me I've got to ask you for wisdom. I've got to not doubt, and I've got to have humility within my trial. And I said, but God, I don't know how to do any of these three things when I'm going through it, because I was going through it from Tuesday to Thursday, and I never did any of this. Except for the humility piece, I was laid out basically. And he said, why don't you go down to verse 19? I want to show you something. He says, My dearly loved brothers, talking directly to me and to you. Understand this. Okay, I asked for wisdom, now you're giving it to me. Everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. That's how you do this thing about getting God's wisdom, this thing about having humility, this thing about not doubting. You do it by being quick to hear, slow to speak. We need to learn how to speak half as much as we listen. And in all instances, we need to learn how not to get so angry at God, angry at us, angry at them. Angry. And so what God showed me, he says, finding joy in disaster is going to require for me to listen to God's wisdom. I've got to listen to him. How do I hear from God? I read his word. I pray and I meditate. I spend time with him. I watch stuff about him. I actually want to be around him. I listen to music in the car. I do everything I can to try to get as much God. I put myself in situations. I go to Bible study. I come to church. I go any place I can get a little bit of God from. He says, but not just listening to me, but you need to watch what you say to avoid doubting, because all your doubt from Tuesday to Thursday were things that came out of your mouth. When they gave you the news, you began to doubt me, my ability, this situation, everything. Your ability, what you've gone through so far, the endurance that I built into you, you begin to doubt everything. You were the one that said, I can't handle this. You were the one who said, I don't know what I'm going to do. You were the one who said, I'm not going to make it through this. I said that to myself about my trial. And Thursday night, God gave me wisdom out of this world. Listen, Thursday night I sat down with the brooms. We prayed after dinner. We just stopped in the middle of the walkway, and we just started praying. And everything I had asked for on Tuesday, God, I take this off of me. Remove this from me. Help me, God. I can't make it. It's just too heavy. It hurts too much. I'm dreading too much. It's too much pain. I'm scared. Everything. Lift it right off of me. Broom said something to me. He said that I was trying to figure out a way to replace a loved one, which is not possible. Matter of fact, it's impossible to replace a loved one. He said, sometimes we think about loved ones like going to the refrigerator and getting milk out, and then once that milk carton is empty, we need to go and get another milk carton and put it in. But he told me this now, and listen, you got to get this, because God said, if you want wisdom, and I asked God for wisdom, and this is wisdom. He said, no. A loved one is not like replacing milk. A loved one is more like being given a viable medicine. And you just take that until it's gone, till the whole prescription is gone. And once you've gotten, and God already knows the full benefit of medicine, just like the doctor, he says, listen, I want you to take this medicine. I want you to take it every day, 3 times a day. I want you to take it until this thing's empty. And when this thing's empty, you don't need any more, because you've gotten the full benefit out of this medicine. And even though you might still be coughing, even though you might feel like there's still just a little bit more benefit to get out of it, even though you may not completely understand the prescription The reality is that God understands it, and then that is it. And when it's done, now you just look back and you look for the joy. You look for the healing. You look for the good things. You focus on the joy. You use God's wisdom. You stop talking doubt into yourself. It changed my whole perspective. It changed my whole perspective. In an instance, I felt this whole thing lift out to me. Now listen, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have challenging days. I will. You don't lose anything as valuable as what I'm facing and not be challenged. But as long as I can continue to look for joy, look for joy, look for joy, look at all the good things, focus on joy, focus on the good things that God can do, and seek God's wisdom for what He's going to have me do. And I can tell you right now, the thing that God's going to have me do for this is to be there for every one of you. I don't want anybody in this world to ever feel like I felt Tuesday and Wednesday. It is my mission. It is my calling to do everything that I can to do what Broom did for me. So, and the final thing we got to do, we got to be able to control our temper. Listen, guys, when we're going through something, we're fearing, we're dreading, our tempers are so easily to get out of control. And I felt that the first couple of days that we were on the trip, maybe a few other days. Because when I'm hurting, when I'm worried, when I'm stressed, I can be a little quick. And what James is telling us is that, listen, we need to always guard against anger. Anger against ourselves. Because listen, the number one person that you're angry with when you're going through a trial, a lot of times is you. But also anger at the person that you felt like put you to the trial. And then, of course, anger with God, because many times we are in a position where we think, God, why are you doing this to me? Why? I'm angry with you. He says in verse 12, he says, a man who endures trials is blessed. He says, because when he passes the test, he receives the crown of life that God has promised to those whom He loves. God loves you. He's promised you a crown of life. Listen, if you just hang in there, I know this trial is hard. I know it's tough. And there are going to be various trials. You're not going to just have a trial-free period. And sometimes you're going to have multiple trials. And sometimes when you put down one thing, you say, I finally got things going well in my marriage, and then all of a sudden the kids out of whack. And then I got the kids and the wife together, now the job's out of whack. And I got the kids, the wife, and the job out of whack, and now the car is down. James promises that we're going to have various trials, but in those trials, there's joy. And he says that if we would just endure, if we would just focus on God's wisdom, if we would just listen to God, spend time with God, if we would just control our anger, if we would just not doubt, just have faith in God, that we will see some rewards. And those rewards are so clear within the text. He says, first of all, you'll have joy in the middle of disaster. Folk will look at you and try to figure out, how are you keeping it together? How can you have joy after you have gone through this disaster? How can you be like that tree? You lost all your limbs, all your leaves. You were exploded. You had all types of metal and glass in you. How did you survive that? Let alone have joy in the middle of it. How can you thrive in it? But not only are you promised joy in the middle of your disaster, because listen, joy is coming in your trial. I'm opening that up for you right now. But you're going to have wisdom in all circumstances. You know, the difference between wisdom and knowledge is like knowing stuff, and wisdom is like knowing what to do when it's time to do it. I know a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge and are really smart, but they don't know what to do at the right time. But God's going to give you wisdom in all your circumstances. God's going to give you stability in all the areas of your life. I know it feels like everything's unstable and out of control, but we've talked about why. And if you would just endure through your trials, God will give you stability in all areas of your life. And then the final thing he says, he's got this crown thing, this thing that we're all looking for. So the first three, God is saying, I'm going to bless you in your life. Your life's going to be better if you just can find joy inside of your trials. Your marriage is going to be better if you can focus on joy in the middle of your trials. Raising your kids, better if you can focus on joy in the middle of your trial. Kids, school, better if you can just focus on joy in the middle of the test and the bullying, whatever it is that's coming against you. If you can just focus on God and the joy that he'll bring to you, God's going to make your life here better. But the final thing that he gives us is this thing called life after death. He's going to give you a crown in heaven one day. He's going to come to you and say, job well done. You got through those trials. You learned the lesson. You received the wisdom. You weren't angry. You controlled your tongue. I got a crown for you. Now come here, good and faithful servant. This is your crown. Now be with me in my glory. And so the promise for going through the disaster, you can't get around this. You're going to go through trials. I don't care what you are, whether you're Jew, Christian, Muslim, atheist. You're going to go through trials. But if you can focus on joy, God's going to give you these things as a reward. And in particular, this thing about life after death, I wanted to show you a picture of this tree now. This is an 80-year oak tree that was stripped down in 1995 to a few unrecognizable branches. It didn't have one green leaf on it, and all the bark was off of it. It had glass, it had metal in it. But look what God can do. And I don't know about you, but I'm just fascinated. Even in the middle of my trials, with all the things that I have had going on in my life, with the things that I've lost in this season, with the season in front of me and the trials that it presents, I am fascinated with what God's getting ready to do with all my trials. I'm fascinated with the things that I'm going to see inside of your lives as you go through your trials. I'm fascinated being your pastor. I'm fascinated with this God that can bring a tree back from the dead and give it life. So I want to leave you with this. I want this to be your thought for this week. I will seek joy during my adversity and trust God to fascinate me. I will seek joy during my adversity and trust God to fascinate me. What I want you to do is, I want you to start looking at your trials differently. I want you to start looking at those things that come against you differently. I want you to start looking for the joy within those situations, what God has done in those situations in many instances, but what God is going to do through those situations in your life. I want you to seek joy. I don't care how hard it is, in whatever trial you're going through. And I want you to trust that God can do exactly the same thing he did for that tree. That God can come into your marriage and bring beautiful, lush greenery, that he can come into the relationship with your children, that he can come into your school, into your job, that he can come into your single life and open up new things and bring life to places where you thought death was. To God be the glory.
We stand in the presence of our Savior.
It's an honor
And it's an honor to lift our voice and sing
to the living God.
to the living God.
No one can
No
deny
one can deny
that Jesus
that
Christ
Jesus Christ is